first round of the season took place in Doha, and for a very sunny practice, the field got out for the first practice session of the new season. The the Irish-based Lucky Strike Cosworth team performed fairly well in practice, both of their drivers clocking off plenty of laps to try and get a feel for their brand new machinery. Other drivers were also getting the hang of the new track and also the new cars. But the pace setters seem to be all over the place. The Rossinis and the Steinmans appear to be off the pace in practice, but perhaps dialing in race setups. Whereas other cars like the Katanos were surprisingly quick in qualifying trim. But things would be determined in practice, which would be under the lights, a very different setting to the sunny in the day practice session. No, none of the teams had particularly major developments except for the Catorzi, who confirmed we already knew in the fact that Mezawar would be driving in place of Parachapatia for the first round of the season, and Kofi Koro was looking rather beaten up and sluggish in his car, but he was determined to not miss his and his team's opening race of the season. So Koro struggled on into qualifying, where everything turned out to be quite ordinary from what preseason showed us in the beginning of the season in March. With Dieter Wexler leading the way, with Harry Chapman alongside, Neil Sara and Sharp on the second row, with Surikoff fifth. Although surprisingly, Vasquez was sixth, ahead of Aki Limited, Gonzalez, Schmidt, and a disappointing Nina Holtz who screwed up her Q3 lap. Michael Fidel with the Lucky Strike Cosworth package and outstanding 11 alongside Wookie with DeGraff. Veteran Olivier with 14th and Buttering Bob McCurr. The Volans were struggling with understeer. Woodford struggled to a disappointing 18th. With Moreno won pretty far back in the golden. So, with that out of the way, Toro was at the back as well for the race. But anything can happen in this series, and it usually does. With the race set to get away under the lights, all bets were off going into the season opener. As the five lights went underway to start the season, the lights came out and the field got away to a brilliant start for the Steinman of Harry Chapman. Further back, though, there was contact and several cars went wide in the opening corner. There was contact for Esteban Ribeiro, who didn't make it very far in his Volant before he crashed in Sector 1. Jeremy Woodford went off the track, Samuel Blanc went off the track, Maria Gonzalez, who had a flying start, also went off, and in the middle of the field, unseen by the cameras, was Zoe Sharp, who in turn 1 ran into the back of Dieter Wexler and damaged her front wing, which, while trying to make it back to the pits, it collapsed, she ran over it, and she crashed into the wall, and Zoe Sharp's title hopes took a big hit to start the season with a DNF. Wexler, however, was mostly undamaged and carried on just fine, chasing after teammate Neil Asarian and Harry Chapman, who led the race. Surikov had also gotten a flyer had also gotten a good start to get to fourth. Holtz was up to a brilliant ninth. Vidal struggled down to 12th, and Lucia Flores, the Spanish rookie in the Rezzardo Corsa, got a flying start as well to move her way up into 11th place on the medium tire. A great start for the young Spaniard driver. But after lap 1, an engine glitch kicked Sarian down to fourth before on lap 6 he chose to pit, having been staring at Surikov's diffuser for several laps. Putting on the medium tire, he came out at the back of the field and decided to try an undercut strategy to see if he could gain the advantage over his teammate and Chapman up ahead. Meanwhile, in the midfield, Wolfgang Schmidt was putting on a show in his new BMW-powered Van Dort, holding up an angry line of cars behind him. First Although first passed would be Nina Holtz in her Steinman, easily getting by the orange, blue and white car. While everybody else behind, including Olivier and both of the Katanas, were angrily behind in a choo-choo train. While Holtz decided to pit at the end of lap 11 for new tires herself, seeing Soren going much faster on his pressure tires, Holtz chose to respond and followed it and came in for new boots. Although Soren got out ahead of the German driver. While those two were negotiating traffic, Wexler and Chapman continued to try and march on, trying to gain an advantage before their tires fell off as well. Further, lap 12, and Iker Vidal was shown on the cameras for the first time in the race. The Spaniard also trying to show his skills and his new car, trying to overtake Lucia Flores, who was still stuck behind the Wolfgang Schmidt train. Vidal tried everything he could to get by the young Spaniard, but Flores was proving that she wasn't going to be an easy woman to pass. Surprisingly, though, another driver in the mix in the train was Sina Jono Hamrin in the Asia Road Racing car, who had been surprisingly consistent and hanging in amongst the field, neatly overtaking Vidal as Flores had gone by Schmidt just ahead. Schmidt's tires were struggling, and at the end of the lap, he pitted as well. At the end of lap 13, Dieter Wexler and Harry Chapman both came in at the same time, both putting on the medium tire and getting out just in time to see several other cars go by them, including Siri Lundqvist, who was in the way, and Wexler's teammate Nilo Sarien, who was effectively the race leader, having jumped both his teammate and the leader Chapman in the pit stops. But traffic was going to be a serious issue, as Sarien was finding out. Meanwhile, further ahead, Olivier, who had started on the soft tire outside the top 10, had gone for a mammothly long stint on those tires, but they eventually began to fade, and at the end of lap 17, she was getting ready to come into her Windsor pit crew. While she dove into the pit lane, Nina Holtz took a big dive bomb to the inside of teammate Chapman and snuck by up into effectively second place behind Sarien and the yet to stop Rick DeGraff. Until Holtz made a mistake a lap and a half later and gave up the spot to Chapman once again, and Dieter Wexler, who had also gone by Chapman in the meantime. As Wexler began to find out that Rick DeGraff was definitely a very hard man to pass when he doesn't want you to. Chapman began to fly on his tires as he managed to neatly overtake both of the Rossinis to move up into first place at around the halfway point of the race, with the two Rossinis angrily staring at his rear diffuser until Wexler got tired of it and simply just drove right by Chapman. Surprising pace for the Rossini team, and he set the fastest lap into the bargain at a 1:35.7 before teammate Sarien in turn 1 did the exact same thing and just drove by Chapman. Were Chapman's tires fading, or were the Rossinis suddenly having a big burst of speed in the middle of the race? It was confusing to pundits and commentators alike, as the Rossinis were now leading in a 1-2, with Chapman third and Holtz fourth, a couple seconds behind. Oliveira, who was on fresh soft tires and charging, getting by a North for 6 in the back, off in the distance, and several other cars throughout the field having made different stops and made various strategy calls. Several going for the orange hard tire to try and run to the end. Chapman wasn't going to give up though, and at the end of the lap where he lost second place to Sarien, he simply powered back through on the straight and got Sarien back once again. Brilliant stuff indeed. Lap 38. Dieter Wexler came in for his final stop alongside Aki Lippinen, who pitted for the medium tires. Wexler managing to just come out ahead of Nina Holtz, who had pitted a few laps earlier for the medium tire as well. The middle compound seeming to be the better tire to take, as had a better consistent pace throughout an entire stint than the soft tire did. Knowledge perhaps for teammate Sarian, who had yet to pit. Time would tell. As Iker Vidal made his second appearance on camera, trying to defend against, of all people, Nikolai Surkov in the only remaining Panther for 10th place and a point, while trying to trace down Sina Jono Hamrin's Asia Road Racing directly in front of him, who was 9th. Unfortunately, Vidal's hard tires were no match for the softer and fresher medium tires in Nikolai Surkov. That and also Surkov's car was clearly much faster than Vidal's Lucky Strike car, but the Spaniard gave it a good try nonetheless. Lap 44. Chapman came in for fresh soft tires, and in a surprising move, many had expected him to go to the end and just simply try and hold out versus Cesarian and Wexler, who were on fresher tires behind him. He did not, and he began trying to chase down the two Rossinis, who swapped positions to allow Wexler through, given Wexler had a 5-second time penalty to deal with. Lap 49. Chapman was still charging, having set the fastest lap into the bargain. He overtook teammate Nina Holtz for 3rd place to get onto the podium, while behind them in the same corner, Anna Oliveira set up Jenny North and neatly overtook North to take 6th position. As Holtz, while that battle was going on, ran wide, trying to keep up with Chapman. Lap 51, and the gap was just under 5 seconds as Chapman began to chase down Sarian. With 2 to go, he neatly overtook the Rossini into turn 1, a bit of a payback for the earlier move that the Finnish driver made on the British driver. And with Chapman on fresher soft tires and Wexler unable to push harder, and the 5-second penalty over his head, it was all over. Chapman appeared to have pulled a masterclass and managed to get within range to win the race from 2nd place. While that was being processed, Nikolai Surkov and Anna Oliveira both had separate mistakes where they both ran wide off the track, gifting Wolfgang Schmidt, who had been running a fairly quiet race after the opening stint, P6 on the road. Schmidt had driven a fairly quiet race, but managed to get up into 6th place. Surkov was in a frustrating 7th, having been beaten out by Aki Lipinen's Windsor and Wolfgang Schmidt's Van Dorn. Both Katanos managed to recover after indifferent qualifying performances and an indifferent engine to be in 9th and 10th coming the end of the race. The one-stoppers unfortunately did not have a good time. The highest placed runner was Siri Lundqvist running in 14th place, and her Verlan. Still a decent result for the Verlan squad, who had been struggling in the preseason testing with an evil handling car, and the Luxury Strike Cosworth team, who were 15th with Vidal, who had driven a fairly credible race. Nothing too flashy, and the strategy just didn't work out for him, but a credible race nonetheless. But as the checker flag came out, Wexler came across the line first, but it wasn't enough. Harry Chapman came across the line 2.8 seconds behind to win the Doha Grand Prix and take the fastest lap in the bargain to score a maximum 26 points for the event. Sarian came home third, just far enough behind to allow Wexler to be second. Holtz an anonymous 4th amongst the top 2 teams. Lipinen 5th, Schmidt an anonymous but well credited 6th, Surkov 7th, and then the rest of the drivers came across the line. The Flying Rick de Graaf ended up 12th in his debut race. Flores a frustrating 17th after a strategy miscue, and Siri Lund and Hamron was the best of the new teams, finishing 13th ahead of Iker Vidal's 15th, and the disappointing Catorsi team, who finished 20th and 22nd on the road. But they both finished, which is valuable data for that team in their hunt to try and make it up the field in their debut season. All in all, a great race, and the next one was in Yokohama.